and trans nonsense has obfuscated and conflated what a woman is.
The Romans understood,
as identified by the fact that I've asked you to identify what a woman is, and you can't.
Well, it's a self-identity thing. That's my
No, it
point.
isn't. It's a genetic thing.
Well, it's a genetic thing, then no one knew about it before genetics.
So this is not true.
Water was before
No,
we knew what chemical.
no. People are pushing. No, that's just not true. If you go through history, people knew what men and women were in history. Why?
You're saying it's purely physical.
No, not at all. Well, yeah, it's purely biological. But the fact is, the confusion has emerged out of liberal progressive thought that has indoctrinated people very successfully through media, through education, has indoctrinated people to actually contradict what they see with their eyes. You're identifiably a woman. You're identifiably a man. You're identifiably a woman because of your genetics. You're identifiably a man because of your genetics. And the fact that liberal progressive ideologues mutilate little girls and chop them up in a way that is irreversible and chemically castrate them because they're ideological fanatics, and use chemicals to try and change the balance of chemistry inside the human body so that a woman starts presenting as a man and a man starts presenting as a woman, is a sign, a proof to the fact that your whole ideology is built on lies and requires lies to be maintained.
I think we disagree with chemical castration the same way you disagree with chemical castration in the 1950s, okay?
Actually, you can't speak for all humanists, for one, because humanism is individualistic.
You can't speak for all Christians.
I can speak for all Christians because Christians use a religious authority that is outside of the individual, and it's not about what the masses think or what any one individual thinks. It's about what the authority says, and the authority says God created them male and female.
Question: do you define your religious authority by following the Bible or following a specific church, or like based on what your group of people believes?
Both.
Or your individual?
Both. So historical Christianity has always been the church's use and interpretation of the Bible.
Okay, so what about, why would you say that your individual code is...
It's not my individual code, that's the first thing.
Okay, you following the Bible, why is that like more justifiable than someone's individual code?
Right, great question. So what
What a group
right.
thinks?
So in terms of why, I can give you the Christian answer to that, but I'm not giving it to you because I think that in a relativistic world it's a convincing answer. But as a Christian, I believe that the scriptures are inspired by God's Holy Spirit to write down what God is doing in history, who God is, and how we should live. And so for me, because the church has written the scriptures and identified that these are the authoritative texts, that's where we go to. The reason why my argument is actually a pragmatic one to you. The reason why Christianity is better than liberalism is because the classical liberals, for instance, would puke on liberal progressives and their ideology. Liberalism is mutating. Classical liberals were very much empiricists. They were very much linked to the idea of the study of the natural world, whereas progressive liberals now, and I'm including you both as progressive liberals, have moved away from empirical science, and now you've gone into dogmatic statements of faith, but they're just ones that you've made up. They're not grounded in anything.
But you see the irony. There's irony in saying you can identify however you want, we don't care. And you're saying it's being pragmatic to say you have to be a man, you have to be a woman based on how you were born. I mean, this is the main point, right? I mean, you even say you identify someone as a man, you identify someone as a woman, and that might be different to how someone actually is biologically.
No, it's no different. If
someone looks like a woman, they are definitely a woman.
If they are born a woman, they're a woman. If they are born a man, they are a man.
Okay, but if they look like a woman, someone can look like a woman and be a man.
Doesn't change what their genetic code is.
But you agree, right? Someone can look like a woman. It's not a trick question. Someone can look like a woman, but be a man. Someone can look like a man and be a woman.
Yeah, that's right. But I could look like a monkey, but it doesn't make me a monkey. Like you can buy really good costumes Like, have you seen the Cadbury's advert of the drummer, the ape drummer? Or am I showing my age? Where he goes, yeah, like from right. He looked like a convincing ape. Like, just because someone looks like something doesn't mean that they are something.
That's absolutely fine.
Right. So just because someone looks like a woman doesn't mean that they are a woman.
Okay.
To be a woman.
Do you agree that gender expression and gender identity are different?
No, that is exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. Gender expression has nothing to do with gender identity.
But you just said that.
Gender and sex. Gender and sex are just synonyms. You can use them interchangeably.
Wait, so you're saying gender expression and sex can be two different things?
I am saying that you can look like something, but that doesn't mean what you are. I'm saying that just because you identify as a woman, dress like a woman, present yourself like a woman, does not make you a woman. That is what I am saying, and that's very clear.
Do you think we should suddenly, if someone, because you say gender and sex, I won't use those words, if someone performs as a woman, Judith Butler's words,
Okay, let me ask you this question.
and says they're a woman,
Are you a doctor?
no.
Right, I want you both to do a thought experiment with me. Right? No, wait, do a thought experiment with me.
You go first, and I'll come
Yeah?
afterwards. Goodbye.
Let's not worry about the man in the beard and the funny glasses. Yeah, let's not worry about that. Yeah. So no, I'm talking to these two. Stop being rude. Stop being rude. Right. So let's do a thought experiment. Right. So here's the question: can a man presenting as a woman have a miscarriage?
No,
Right. Why not?
because they don't have.
So in other words,
I'm not a scientist.
they can't perform like a woman, can they?
Well, a woman can have a uterectomy and not have a miscarriage. If a woman with a uterectomy came up and said to me, first of all, I'd say,
Yeah, but that's because
Second of all, I'd say,
they've had a medical intervention that removes what they were born with.
they're still a woman, though, right?
Of course they are.
So, I don't.
But a trans woman who is a man,
Remember this,
right?
trans women
Yeah,
are
let's
women.
just call them a man. A man presenting as a woman can never have a miscarriage until they somehow develop the idea of implanting uteruses into men. But they can't have miscarriages.
Just hypothetically, if that did happen, would that become a woman?
No.
No, because it's genetics,
Yes.
which we didn't know about till the 1950s.
Right, yes.
So,
But before the 90, but no one was confused about this question until the year 2010.
You know, King Henry V in France famously presented as a woman.
And was he known as a king?
No, someone as a queen. It's a very funny situation.
He was known as. Everyone knew he was a man.
It's but it's the point. It
But
gets,
he was no. Hold on. The reality is he was. You even contradict. You even demonstrated my point. He was called king.
I think it's a cultural thing though as well. So this is my broader point. I think how you choose to identify is what matters. If you choose to identify as a woman, fucking great for you, good for you. Does it impact me in any way? I don't care.
What happens if
Doesn't
someone
matter.
presents to be a dog?
Then does it fucking matter?
Yeah. Does that mean that they can have sex with dogs?
No, of course not. In
Why
the same
not?
way
But they're
that if a
present.
man-
No, hold on.
in the same
Hold
way
on
that
one
a trans
second.
woman doesn't
Hold on one second.
necessarily-
Hold on one second. If they're presenting as a dog and a dog wants to have sex with them and they consent to penetrative sex with a dog, what's wrong with that?
How do dogs consent?
Let's say the dog is the one that initiates.
So are you saying different genders?
Are you saying that dogs don't initiate sex?
Dogs, not in that, no.
Yes, they
I'm
do.
not even beginning.
Yes, they do.
Because
No, I want you to answer that
you
question.
know this is ludicrous.
No, it isn't ludicrous. It's using your own logic. And the problem with your own logic is it's so individualistic, and that's the other problem with liberalism. Is it's founded, I'll give you a card, bro. It's founded on the idea of liberalism.
Well, I think it
so-
comes back to my community point though as well. Dogs
Let-
are
let-
part of a communicated community, so they're not able to in the same way that a human can.
There we
That's
go.
Why, if a dog,
No, I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry.
it's not suddenly
sorry.
unethical.
Sorry, 1 second. A dog can communicate that it wants to initiate sex. It mounts your leg.
That's not the same kind of communication. You know. It's
No. What
No,
about
it's
the
not.
deaf, dumb? What about the deaf, dumb, and blind child that we were speaking about earlier?
Dogs are dogs, no?
Probably can't consent to sex either. Don't have sex with a deaf dog.
Dogs can consent to
But I want
sex
to go
if they
back to this
initiate.
point as well. Like, I still don't really have a good answer. How do people know what sex was before genetics? If you need to know genetics to know what sex someone is.
Absolutely no one was confused about that question until progressives came along.
Weimar Republic in Germany had a famous trans community. Like, there was a massive burlesque.
Yes, and people knew that it was a trans community. In other words, they knew what was male and female.
I'm not a scientist. I'm assuming you're not a scientist either, given what you said.
No.
As well. I don't know that much about genetics. I assume you don't either, given we've mixed up XX and XY chromosomes. But you still know what a man and a woman is.
Yes.
You still feel you know what a man and a woman is without that understanding.
No one was confused about this until progressives came along. You're the ones that confused the question.
No.
Because your ideology. Let me explain why you confused the question.
Can you answer mine first? I think this is important.
And then I will make my point. Go on.
Then you can. But I just want to know how, if you don't know genetics, if
Yep.
you go to a working class community up in Dudley,
Yep.
or you go to a farming community down in the southwest,
Yep.
who aren't experts in genetics,
Yep.
how do you think they know, or how do they know what a man or woman is?
Because women can get pregnant, on the whole. Men are usually the
You
ones.
know what I'm going to say though, right?
No. Yeah, not all women get pregnant, right?
So it's
because
different.
they have a menopause, they have periods. They do things. Men don't have periods. Did you know that?
I did know that.
Oh,
Women
I'm-
have periods. My mum's quite old nowadays.
Yes, I know. But she did have periods, right?
She did.
There you go then.
So,
did your father ever have a period?
No.
No, he might have had a bad case of the piles, but it's not the same.
My cousin who's 10
Yeah.
had a period. And
Yeah.
you're not a woman until you've had a period.
No, I wouldn't say that you're a woman just because you have a period.
So there's a
But the
third
point
gender.
is, but the, no,
We
not at all.
found the third
Not
gender.
at all. But the point is, the point is, there is a kaleidoscope of attributes and qualities that are connected to the genetic code, that are universal, except in aberrations amongst all women.
Okay.
Right, and it's universal. There are, of course, aberrations. There are, of course, women that don't have periods ever. But you don't say that because of the abnormality that suddenly gives you grounds to changing what is the experience of 99.99999% of women. And it's on the fact of that kaleidoscope of attributes and qualities that are universally, except for aberrations, experienced by all women, that we can identify what is a woman in, even before genetics. Now, I'm going to make my point. The point that you... No, I'm going to make my point. Right, I'm going to make my point. The problem with your ideology is because of you fetishize the idea of the individual. You've turned the individual into a god, in which the individual can make pronouncements that contradict science, that contradict observation, that contradict reason. And because the individual is so important to you, they can literally define whatever they want, even though it contradicts reality. And that is another problem with liberalism that Christianity doesn't have. Because Christianity doesn't say that you're an individual independent of a community. We are individuals within a body called the church. And that church has its social contract. But that social contract is defined by the unchangeable terms of the apostolic tradition. Whereas you could not meet John Locke and Thomas Jefferson and get him to agree. He would look at you two and say you're both irrational. But he's a liberal and you're liberals. Liberalism has mutated into what you are, but the liberals of 300 years ago would look at you guys as an anathema to liberalism because you're not empirical. And that's the difference. I can have a conversation with a Christian from 2,000 years ago because we have a common language in terms of virtue ethics.
Liberals just based off
I'm
of
sorry?
argument you made.
I do apologise, I didn't catch the beginning of that. Say again?
I said you also identified us as a certain political ideology based off of one argument I've given you.
Are you pro-trans ideology?
Yes, but
Oh, there we go
group
then.
that all way up with progressive.
Well, there's only one group that's pushing trans ideology. It's progressives.
Pushing it and accepting.
No, pushing. Militant progressives are indoctrinating children. They are prosecuting people who disagree with them. They are persecuting people who disagree with them.
So I'm not allowed a diverse viewpoint.
Progressives don't want people to have diverse viewpoints, that's correct. Progressives are intolerant, which is another reason why Thomas Jefferson would look at you guys and think you're horrendous.
Well, I will say, I think you'd have a much better chance having a conversation with Locke than I would. Because
Yeah.
Locke would have said that atheists don't have ethics.
Yeah.
Locke would say you're entirely right.
Yes.
I think that's a very dangerous viewpoint because Locke also said therefore kick out atheists from the country.
I disagree with John Locke.
Well, then I think you'd have difficulty having these conversations.
But I could have a clearer, more based conversation with John Locke than you could. and
think
yet
we've
you're
moved
the
past that
and
as a
yet.
society.
But that's
We've
my
got
point.
better.
You haven't got better. You've degenerated. You can't even define a woman. That's not getting better. That's getting stupid.
I will take this point now, because when you define women, you literally you talk about family resemblances. If you don't know the genetics, you almost know it from a relationship of things that we know. Women broadly have periods. Not all women, of course, do, but some do, some don't. Most women get pregnant. Obviously, some women do, some don't. Most women have uteruses. Obviously, some women cannot have, might
Yeah.
not have one.
Yeah.
Like, we do know these things,
Yeah.
but there's not a 100% case situation where every single woman fits under that one category.
No,
There are
I-
women with XXY chromosomes.
Can you give me
XXX
what's your
chromosomes.
definition of a woman again? Because you haven't given one.
Someone identifies as such,
Right. So what are they identifying as?
as a woman. And
But what is a woman to
self-
identify as?
It's a self-identified.
No,
it includes
hold on,
things
bro.
like how you
Right.
choose.
Look,
to
let me just.
yourself,
The
how you
point.
view your role in
The point is.
society, how you
The point
choose-
is. The point is. What you're doing is this. I'm asking you. Right. You're saying that there's this group of people that are identifying as X. Right. Let's just leave X unspecified. Right. And you're saying that a person is X if they identify as X. And then I'm saying, well, what is X? And then you're saying, well, it's what you identify as. So we might as well swap out the word woman with dog. So if I identify as a dog, I am a dog according to your logic.
So
Because I identify as a dog. Why, if I want to identify as a dog, am I not a dog?
But here's the distinction I want to bring up. If you're identifying as a woman and if you are a woman, or if you identify as a woman and your sex is as a woman, they're different things. If we agree with that, at the very least, then what you identify
I don't
as,
agree with that, by the way.
if we suppose that to be true.
But I don't suppose
Let's
that to
pretend
be
for a
true.
moment and just
I'm
let's
not
go for that.
pretending that that is true.
Well, then how can I explain the difference?
Exactly.
If you don't pretend,
Exactly.
If you won't even
If
consider
we
the concept,
if we
how can I
remove
explain the concept?
But that's the point. If we remove reality from this discussion, the whole discussion just evaporates into air, which is exactly what Marx and Nietzsche warned us about. Well, Marx didn't warn us about it, he celebrated the fact, but Nietzsche certainly warned us that when society decided to reorganize without God as its center, that everything would fall apart, that we would walk over a void, over a chasm in which north no longer is north and south no longer is south, and we simply float in a void and we fall into a chasm. And this is exactly what he warned us about. This is exactly what he mourned in his philosophy. He recognized that it was happening and he feared the consequences of it, and you are the fruits that he warned us about.
But what's the consequences of just accepting someone to not identify how they want to?
Because-
I'm not saying,
yeah, go
let
on.
me be clear,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, therefore you should let them do all the, you shouldn't change the law. Let's not talk about the law, let's talk about politics. Let's talk about healthcare, which has been run roughshod, Tavistock run roughshod,
Yeah.
as the courts have shown,
Yeah.
over the rights of children, over the rights of people who are trying to get healthcare, because the healthcare has been substantive. Just in terms of what you choose to identify, whether I call you a he, or whether I call you a she, or whether I call you a they, why does that matter?
Well, why does it matter? I'll tell you why.
Society will end. That's
No, bro. No. Society will survive, but society won't be.
If every man was a woman and every woman was a man.
So let me reply.
that work?
Okay, so let me reply.
So you've got a bit here as well.
Yeah, thank you. So let me reply to that point. What does it? How does it matter? I'll tell you how it matters. Women have fought for equal rights, and now a bunch of men and their women enablers have decided that women don't exist, and that women rights and women equality is now being undermined because men are dominating female spaces. Women are being forced to accept men presenting themselves naked in changing rooms, fully anatomized as men because they've identified as a woman. There have been examples of women being raped in prison by men who said that they were women. These things matter because women are the victims of trans ideologues like yourselves. And I, as a Christian man, am obliged to defend the natural rights of women as the gentler sex, to protect them from male violence, from male oppression. And that means I must oppose you because you are in favour of male violence and male oppression over women by the fact that you are in favour of trans ideology. You have whitewashed women from the history books. They now no longer exist as far as you're concerned. There's no such thing as a woman because
you know you're being unfair.
you still can't tell me what a woman is. Try again. What is a woman?
It's someone who identifies as such. I mean,
So what are they identifying as?
how you dress, how you perform, how you live in society.
But what is
how you
that?
behave.
What is that? What are you identifying as if you're identifying as a woman? You see, you can't answer.
What are you identifying as if you identify as a woman?
Yeah, what are you identifying as if you
I think it's
identify as a
literally
woman?
as much as that. I think it's a very vapid definition. I don't think it's.
So exactly.
Let's say
So you're now
women
saying that
have
there isn't
been
a thing called a woman.
Let's say that women are now identifying
Someone who gives birth.
Well, that's part of it.
It's the point.
That's all of it.
If it's so, the point is.
I'm
it's
sorry,
so
your
empty
point got
and
lost. Go on.
massive.
Let's just say that we can specify it as what women have looked like throughout history. Okay, we put it as that we are now distinguishing a difference between male and female and the identity of gender. You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with that because women. That is.
But we are distinct. But we
I'm
do.
sorry, but this is the lie of liberal progressives. Liberal progressive has reduced women to how they dress and how long they grow their hair. The reality is that is not the experience of being a woman. Being a woman is dealing with estrogen, riding the dragon. Being a woman is being able. Being a woman is being able to give birth. Being a woman is about having periods, about dealing with these kind of things. It's about
A lot of those things trans women don't deal with.
No, trans women, right? Are as physically strong as other men.
No.
That is not the world that women live in. Women live in a way. Real women, actual women, the real women of the world live in a world in which they must navigate the strength and possible abuse of that strength by men. A trans woman is as physically strong as a man and therefore could defend themselves like a man.
Sorry, let's be
A real woman, pound for pound, would always be the weaker sex.
That's not.
The real experience of women.
If I-
Because they present themselves to women, they have to suffer like women do. They take hormones, they have to suffer like women do.
Yeah, so it's based on a lie because they have to chemically change their bodies, and also.
saying they don't
But
go
your
through
your
the same thing
your
as you do.
definition of a woman is someone who dresses like a woman and grows their hair long. That's rubbish. That is not the sum total of female experience. Female, you do not. You
Tell me
do.
you know the sum total of female experience.
I'm telling you, you do not do service to womanhood when you reduce womanhood to how you dress and how long is your hair and where you wear makeup.
Identifies.
Where, like a man can never be a mother. Never.
Correct, yes.
Can never be a mother. Doesn't matter if they call themselves as a woman.
give birth.
Men and women love children differently.
No, men
Yes,
love
they do.
children as well.
No one ever said anything different. I said they loved children differently. I'll give you just a sort of personal experience. It's not objective science. One of the complaints that I know that happens between couples is that men have an ability to tune out. And that includes tuning out children. I had this experience myself. This ability. I tuned out my own little sister, right, when she was crying in a crib, and my mum screamed at me and she said, "How can you listen to that baby cry and do nothing?" Because her mind as a mother was activated by the cries of my little sister in a way that my mind as a man was not.
I agree with that.
Right, but that is an experience of womanhood that is unique to womanhood. It's beautiful. And you, in your sick, not you're not sick, you're not sick, but your sick ideology has reduced womanhood to basically how you dress. No, you have reduced the women's experience, what it is to be a woman, to how you dress, whether you wear makeup, and whether you grow your hair long.
That's not true.
So what is a woman?
What someone identifies as, and you're reducing it to
And
purely.
how? Okay, so now answer this question: how do you identify as a woman?
Personally, I was born as a woman.
No, I'm not asking you how you identify.
Me identify.
How does someone identify as a woman according to your ideology?
That they say they identify as a woman.
And how
Criteria.
And
Go
they
on.
choose to represent themselves however they want.
So how do they represent themselves as a woman?
How they present themselves however they want to.
So-
and they say
so how
they're
do they-
a woman.
so if someone-
It tends to be that they choose to represent themselves in a feminine manner. But
So
a lot
and
of-
how do they present themselves in a feminine
I
manner?
dress as a dog. Am I a dog?
Yeah, we've already done that argument. Bill. We've already done that argument. We've already done that argument.
But plenty of people that were born as women choose to dress
I know-
in a masculine manner.
so
And they
notice-
get misgendered even though they identify as women and they present themselves themselves looking masculine. They're like, no,
So
I still am a woman.
it's about how they appear, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, that's exactly the argument you've just made.
No.
You've just made it's how they present themselves.
How they choose to
political
identify
thing
what they
that-
The whole distinction,
scared
the whole
to
distinction that
forget
progressives
what
make
war and the stuff
between
that's going
gender
on.
and sex is that they say gender is a social construct based upon presentation. And thus they say that if you decide to dress in a long flowing dress and grow your hair long and wear makeup, and you decide to present yourself in a feminine way with long nails, that therefore, and there you call yourself a woman, because you have presented yourself that way, you are a woman. So in other words, progressive ideology has reduced womanhood to simply how you present. Christianity rejects that because we say that womanhood is, like manhood, something beautiful and unique that is created by God, and there are experiences that are particular and specific and discrete to women that are not shared with men, characteristics, abilities that are unique to women that are not shared with men, that make women distinct and different from men, and you cannot transform from one to the other.
Back to your earlier, like way earlier religious point, you
Women are
believe
women, men
that
are men, that's
your
it.
group ideology is above the individual, right?
One of my criticisms of liberalism is that it fetishizes the individual, yes.
Right, so, but does your group's ideology recognize other religions, other people's beliefs outside of your group?
Of course it does.
Right, okay. So in Native American belief of the Two-Spirit, do you let them do what they do and believe that there can be a third gender identity or not?
Right, so
That's their practice.
I mean,
you won't respect
well,
their
firstly,
religion or not?
firstly, let's get this right. Indians aren't one group. There are different tribes
Yeah, so
with
certain-
different beliefs,
certain Native
and
Americans.
yeah, exactly. So let's not generalize about Native Indians, Native Americans. Sorry. So but if Christians come across something, a belief system that is false, false.
Your definition of false.
Yeah, like something that doesn't match reality, which is what trans ideology is. It's an ideology that doesn't match reality, because that which is truth is truth is that story, that narrative that corresponds to reality.
Like your mental, spiritual, religious belief and their mental, spiritual.
Yeah,
and
I'm
religious
literally
belief.
answering your question. I'm literally answering your question. So truth is that which corresponds to reality. That which is false is something that doesn't correspond to reality. If I say gravity does not exist, gravity is a lie made up by NASA, right? Every single person immediately knows I'm talking rubbish. Why? Because I've given a description of the world that doesn't match reality. So if someone says to me that there is this indefinable word called woman and you can just identify yourself as it, then I know from biological evidence, historical evidence, sociological evidence, psychological evidence that women actually do exist. And those that are arguing that women is just this social construct that you can identify as, I know that their story about reality is false, and therefore I would seek to convince them otherwise, whether they're a Native American or an American, European American, or an English European.
I want to go back to this though, but and to understand a woman is what? It's a family of things that you say, assuming you're not a geneticist, we say it's a family of things, like it's probably going to be able to get pregnant, probably able to have a period.
Why are we talking about women as if they are it's?
So I didn't mean to say it. If I said it, that's the what I meant.
That's
I
where
said
your
probably
ideology has
able
led
to
you,
get
bro.
pregnant, probably able to have a period, not necessarily, probably has a uterus, not necessarily. It's a lot of these things which probably are true, but not
Yeah,
necessarily.
not all men have beards. In fact, even some women have beards, right? But there is a kaleidoscope. No, we're really not. This is your fantasy world, right?
Mike for me.
This is your fantasy world, and your fantasies are dangerous. They're dangerous to women. This is why you two are anti-women.
Well, let's just take this.
Right?
Let's just take the ought, because you keep going back to the is.
Yes.
I just want to take.
So the ought. Let's go to the ought.
If you let me say my statement.
Yeah.
And then you say why you think it's wrong.
Okay.
If you want to identify as a man or a woman or any other gender or no gender at all, or whatever on that gender spectrum,
Yeah.
you should be able to. And as a society, it's not right or wrong to choose to do so or to identify others as such.
Okay. Here's my reply. Telling lies is bad. Do we agree? Do we agree that we should live life as honestly as possible?
The truth is the truth, and
Yeah.
a lie is a lie.
Right. as a principle, living your life by the truth is a good thing. Are we all agreed? Right. If you create a society or live in denial of that which is true, that is harmful. And saying that women don't exist is a lie, a damned lie of the devil, because it denies 50% of humanity their rights based on their gender. Notice I'm using gender and sex as the same thing? Therefore, trans ideology is bad. Saying that you can identify as whatever gender you want is bad because it's about living out a lie.
Are you not causing the confusion though, as much as he is?
Go on.
Well, you refuse to distinguish between sex and gender.
Correct.
You refuse to distinguish between sex and gender.
No, he does.
Oh, I do. I promise you I do.
Well,
He does, he really does.
if you distinguish between sex and gender, why can't you define woman according to sex
Exactly.
rather than gender?
Yep.
I think I agree with his
It's a great
definition.
point.
I agree with his definition.
No, you don't.
What's my...
Just not of gender.
Well, yes, so we both disagree because we have a genuine disagreement. But why do you define woman according to a socially constructed set of stereotypes
Yes.
rather than sex?
Correct.
Because I think gender is socially constructed.
Well,
While I
we
think
agree on
sex
that.
is biological.
Well, yeah, well, we both agree on that.
We both agree.
Yeah,
You
but
agree.
why? No, but
No.
you haven't
That's
answered my
so-
question.
Yeah.
My question
Sorry,
is,
what am I not getting?
why do you use a socially constructed set of gender stereotypes
To define
to
woman.
define woman
Rather than sex.
biological sex?
Yeah.
That's the only thing we disagree on.
I think women can mean two things. Does that answer your question?
Women can mean two things.
Well, there's women in the sense of sex, and there's women in the sense of gender.
Okay.
No, there's women in sense of sex, and that's it.
But we disagree that you
Yeah.
can distinguish.
So what?
Well,
So
we agree
Are
on
we on the same
everything
page?
except for why you use gender to define women
rather than sex.
sex.
So I'll tell you why. So this began as a conversation around law, around politics, around how we live as a society. And how we live as a society, we should talk about we should use the social construct of the word. We should use gender as a social construct. And the point I'm making...
I know, shocking,
I'm
right?
gonna have to agree.
Shocking, right?
Woman, if you want to identify as a man,
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
no skin off my back. Doesn't matter.
I'll give you a card.
And I think it's a
But
fair
it matters
point.
to other
Right.
people.
Can-
It does, and I think it's a fair point to say.
Can I-
we have to
Excuse me, sir.
Women's
Excuse
sports.
me. Excuse me, sir. Please. We were having a
sorry,
conversation.
okay.
So let's be clear, right? Let's be clear, right? This is the problem with liberalism. The root of this problem emerges from liberalism's emphasis on the individual.
Only with this one.
The idea that the individual
Biggest threat to
should be autonomous over everything.
most things.
It has got to the point that it started off with the idea of the individual being free from religion imposed upon it.
right.
But it's got to the point now where individualism should be free from reality. Should be free from reality. The reality is you cannot give me a reason, a logical reason, consistent to your own worldview, that says if I present as an ape, why am I not an ape? You can't give me a logic. If you are willing to say that woman doesn't mean anything and it's just how you present, then we can say that there's a difference between being a primate and being an ape, because we're both primates, but we're not apes. So if I present as an ape, you have no grounds to say I am not an ape according to your logic, but you will now become inconsistent and you will now use the arguments that I've been using against you for the last hour to tell me that I'm not an ape. Tell me why, if I say I'm an ape and I present as an ape, I am not an ape.
I'll tell you why I'm being consistent as well, so I'll come back to that point. Politically speaking, socially speaking, if you want to identify as an ape, no skin off my back, there's many thick people in the world, that's absolutely fine. And we shouldn't have a government or we shouldn't have a political society
That's not my question.
that tries to regulate it.
That's not my question.
It's just not true.
So you think
it's
it
not
should?
True,
So you think?
but you are free to believe that.
So
That's what's good about
Why is it? Well, hold on 1 second. Did you see what you just did there? You just said if I want to identify as an ape, it's not true. Did you see when you did that? So I've just said to you that men that say that they identify as a woman, well, it's not true that they are women. But then you say, no, that's not fair. Well, now explain to me why is if I present as an ape, that I am not an ape, that is not true, But when a man presents as a woman, it is true that they are a woman.
It's a double
Because
standard.
one
It is a double standard. You're right.
because one is a social construct, and we had this conversation. We know what a social
One is a
construct
social.
is.
So how? Wait. You're saying one is a social construct. So what? How is an ape not a social construct?
Because when we talk about ape, we're not talking. No one's talking about ape as a
It's a
gender.
separate species.
Wait. It's a separate species. Women are a separate gender.
Thank you. Different sex.
They're
No,
separate.
but the reason we have separated men and women in society is because it's a gender role that was placed on women throughout history.
No, it's a gender role that emerges out of the fact that men and women are biologically different.
Yes.
Okay.
Now that has often, for a huge amount of human history, been abused by men.
Yes.
And women have been the victims of men's violence and men's abuse of their biological strength. Right? There's no doubt about that in history. Right? But that itself, those abuses emerge out of biological differences. You're trying to tell me that biological differences aren't real because you have unfixed your ideology from the real world.
Can I just clarify from your worldview, though?
As a
you're
Christian.
saying- as a Christian, you're saying that there's social norms that have been created from what you see as biological reality.
There are social norms. Yes, there are social norms that are created by societies.
So there's the biological facts of being a woman.
Yes.
And then there's social norms that come from being a woman. Or there's a
Yes.
distinction there, right?
Yes, there is. Yes.
So there's the social side of it.
Yep.
Let's call that gender hypothetically. And then there's the biological side of it. We can call it sex hypothetically.
Yeah.
That's how I'm using those words.
You can
I
use
think-
the words that. I'm not going to use words that way.
Okay. That's, I think, really important though, because I think when we talk about social constructs,
Yep.
we're talking about how we live together as a society, we talk about politics, we talk about laws about that restrict our freedom to behave in certain ways. Again, we saw in the 20s in Germany, not going in the darker period later, but in the 20s in Germany, we saw trans rights in burlesque shows and so on getting restricted and limited. We see that today, we see in America, we see trans rights being restricted and limited in ridiculous ways. We see trans rights being made into, and someone talked about conspiracy theory a moment ago, this is my personal pet peeve. I think trans rights has become a sort of fetish, it's become a sort of effigy that we're trying to burn when there are real
it's a
problems we
fetish
deal
of
with as
progressives.
society.
It's a fetish of progressives.
All I'm saying is
Wait,
let
no.
people do what they want.
But you don't
And
know.
we
You
regulate.
don't know.
We
You
regulate.
no, you don't know.
Gender, but
Hold on one
based on
second.
fact.
Hold on one second. That's exactly what progressives aren't doing. Because if I misgender someone, progressives will prosecute me.
Do you
Right?
think we
One
should do
second.
that?
One second. That is what progressives
I
are
just
doing.
mentioned a bit of a contradiction. You said,
Yep.
let them do whatever you want, but regulate them. But by you regulating them, you're not letting them do whatever
Exactly.
Don't regulate
You're
them.
setting
Don't.
limits.
Right.
You don't regulate them.
So he ends up
So you
in
don't
anarchy.
believe in any kind of boundaries or
No,
limits.
you
Yeah.
regulate for things other than basically other than gender.
But can I point? Hold on one second.
You don't
Hold on one
regulate
second.
based
Hold on one
on whether a
second.
man or
We
woman
all
should be
know why
based
Jordan.
on
We all know
gender.
why Jordan Peterson became famous, because Canada tried to introduce a law of compelled speech. When you had to use the pronouns that someone said, these are my pronouns. And we've now got to a point whereas if you misgender someone, as if such a thing were possible, if you misgender someone, you can lose your job, you could be prosecuted for a hate crime. Liberal progressives always talk about tolerance. Let's have inclusivity. Let's live in a world in which people accept one another. But they are the least tolerant people in the world.
Accept my religion.
They are the most bigoted
We're against
people
transgender.
in the world. They are the most fanatical people in the world. Progressivism is a religion. It is a this world religion, and it is pushed by fanatics who are intolerant, who want to take away your rights, who want to take away your freedom, who want to force you to accept their dogmas, and all of you must oppose these progressives.
Yes.
You must oppose them because given the opportunity, they will cast you out of your job, they will cancel you, they will take away your freedom of speech. It is an evil ideology, just like Nazism was an evil ideology, just like communism is an evil ideology. Liberal progressivism is an evil ideology that every good person should oppose.
Biggest threat.
And I agree, we should do more to protect
Go on,
freedom.
the lady
of
has a
society.
question. Go on.
Within your religion, you believe in converting others into your religion.
Yep.
But you're tolerant of others.
Yeah.
So do you believe in like, just letting people do as they wish?
No.
No.
Christianity doesn't lead to that way. So Christianity has a principle, Christianity has a view of law and how law should be used. So I'm going to quickly explain how it works. Firstly, Christianity says that law is a secular activity. So in other words, it isn't something that is prescribed from the book in terms of the covenant that we're in. It is a secular activity that secular societies prescribe their laws, but it's not voidless. It's not just creating laws in a vacuum. It's creating laws according to a set of values and a set of beliefs.
So because of your beliefs,
Let me finish. And our view of law is that the role of law is to hold back the tide of sin. It isn't to give freedom to sin, it's to hold sin back. But in terms of doing good and what good looks like, there is no law. We don't prescribe what doing good looks like, we only prescribe against evil. So there used to be in this country, I don't know if you know this, there used to be a law called Section 28, which meant that you could not proselytize LGBT transgender ideology in schools to children. I want to put on record that I think we need to bring back that law and outlaw propaganda to schools that is pro-LGBTQT. We need to ban it because the result of it is that we are creating a society disconnected from reality, as you have witnessed in this conversation, and we're also allowing child grooming to occur in schools and the sexualization of children in schools under the guise of educating people about LGBTQ.
okay, so because of your belief system, you believe you can regulate what other people outside of your belief system identify with and believe in.
Yes. And that's exactly what you're doing. But you're claiming that you don't. The difference is, I'm being very honest, I'm saying that I wouldn't actually stop your freedom of speech. If you wanted to misgender someone and call a man a woman and a woman a man, I would let you do that. I would not punish you for misgendering people, for calling men women and women men. But progressives do want to prosecute me for misgendering people.
So you don't think there's a difference between free speech and the inclusion of hate speech?
I think that if I had to choose a world that had a radical adoption of free speech like they do in the US, or what the progressives are trying to push in our world, I'd go for the American model every time. I don't think it's perfect. I'm not a liberal. Remember, I'm a Christian, not liberal. Christians, not liberals. Okay? But if I had to choose between the world that the progressives want to create and the world that the classical liberals created in America, I'd choose the classical liberal America every time over the progressives. I'm not committed to free speech ideologically. If you came into my church and started blaspheming, I'd grab you by the hair, I'd pull you out. Right? If you started desecrating a Bible in front of me, I'd probably try and get that Bible out of your hands. Right? I'm not pro free speech ideologically. But in terms of degrees of goodness, free speech is slightly better than having the progressives control the limits of free speech.
Do you not think it'd be better if we just lived in a society?
This brother wants to ask a question.
Okay.
As much as Bob knows, I don't agree with Bob on many things. I don't like Bob with many things. But with regards to this is why you'll find a lot of Muslims and Christians, they support one another. They go to the schools and they protest. You acknowledge this, you can't disagree with this, it's the reality. And because despite our differences, the Muslim Christians will ask, who decides what's right and wrong? Where is your moral compass from? How do you derive what's correct?
All right. Look, what's your name?
Mia.
Nice to meet you, Mia. Have you got a Bible?
Yes, I do.
Okay, God bless. Take care.
That's a fair question, right? Who decides what's right and wrong?
We kind of covered that earlier in the conversation.
What did he say?
So I believe that it should be, we come together almost groups like this and we essentially decide what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed.
Can I
And
ask
we
you a
should
question
imagine
then,
it
if you
in
don't
such a
mind?
way.
Can I ask you a question then? So
Okay,
I'm
very
saying,
quickly.
do you agree with homosexuality?
Yes.
Do you support it?
I mean, I would
Like,
allow
as in,
it, yes.
You would say love is love. You would allow it, but as in, do you support it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
so-
politically, yes.
Okay, so would you say it's because love is love and that it's no one else's business?
Because it's no one else's business, yeah.
Yeah. And because love is love, it doesn't matter? Or?
I don't think it matters hugely that love is love,
Okay.
but I think it's because it's no one's business what people do in the privacy of their own home.
Okay.
Except
But
it
once
doesn't-
it's- once it's in
it doesn't
public-
harm other people.
One second. The reality is that up until developments like things like the NHS, there were social consequences to the practice of homosexuality. The reality is that the spread of syphilis and the spread of other sexual diseases was
Different diseases we never heard of before.
rampant amongst homosexuals.
Absolutely.
But it was rampant. It was if you go to a gum clinic in the UK and you look at the adverts for gum clinics in the UK, they are directed mainly to the homosexual community. Why?
That is true.
Because of
That
the
is true.
proclivity. Because of the proclivity. When you combine the male sex drive
it's true.
with sexual diseases, you get the spread of sexual diseases. That's just a fact.
I think a large part
Who
of that
suffered
also,
most?
and
Who
I
suffered
think a
most?
large part. Let me finish because you had your point.
Per
Let me
capita,
come in.
one second. I'll end on a question. Per capita, which sexuality per capita suffered most from the HIV virus?
Men,
Which kind of men?
gay men, absolutely.
And AIDS.
And I think
Yeah,
one of the
that's
biggest
HIV,
reasons,
AIDS,
yeah.
of this, one of the biggest problems of that was things like Section 28, which massively reduced education in the UK and similar laws in the US about how to practice safe gay sex. And I think this is one of the problems of when religion gets involved
Can
in
I make a
government.
quick point?
It's
I
when
think
of course.
churches
Then
start
maybe
trying
we
to
can
use
talk later.
morality
Yeah, sure.
to try and influence what we should or shouldn't do. Now, I think it's important as well, because let's go back as well. Let's talk about because we talk HIV specifically, but in general, I think it's important to have free speech is symmetric information. It's about knowing what the other person is. If you've got HIV and you're not telling me, that's a big problem, and that's part of freedom of speech. It's knowing about what's the situation, what is fact.
So
it's that equality of conversation. If you're standing up on a 12-foot pedestal, I'm not going to talk to you.
Can I just-
know some
yeah.
people here do. But it makes it much harder to have an equal conversation. I think this is much better, right? Because we can have an equal conversation.
Can I just add one point? So I think the difference here is this: we, especially I'm speaking from a Muslim perspective, I think you might actually agree with this. We believe in the concept prevention is better than cure, right? We set the boundaries, we prevent it from happening in the first place, rather than allowing it to happen, then having to deal with the mess. This is why, and we ask this question again: who decides what is morally correct or incorrect? When you say, okay, yeah, love is love, homosexuality should be allowed, then by that logic, if love is love, then do you agree with incest? Do you agree with the mother?
No, but I don't believe in.
Pedophilia.
No, but I'm saying, would you agree?
No, because it's not
No,
consenting
but like-
individuals.
Wait. Well, I think they are consenting individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're consenting. If a mother
One
consents
second.
to
No, hold on.
her son, do you?
Wait.
Now
Okay,
you're
okay.
gonna see
One second,
the root
one
crux
second.
of the issue.
Calm down.
Yeah.
Right. If a brother and a sister agree to practice safe sex, so they will use a condom, right? But they've consented
Yeah.
as adults, right?
agree?
They made that rational choice. Would you say that incestuous sex is acceptable?
Morally, no.
On what grounds?
Because it can cause so much damage. Because it causes so much.
They're practicing
harm.
safe sex.
Homosexuality
But they're practicing
can be
We'll
safe
agree on
sex.
this point. We'll agree
But
on this
hold
point.
on one second.
Morally, I believe that the family unit is a very valuable part of society.
Where did
They're
you
not.
get
I
that
think
from?
incest goes against
What-
that.
who
now,
defines
here's
a family?
the important difference, though. Because I don't think that's a heart matter.
No, I think it's no.
I think
This
it's
is
a heart matter.
Necessary. It's
What's
essential.
legal?
Look, you're making me a Christian and a Muslim ally on this. I don't want to ally with this guy.
He doesn't want to ally with you. He really doesn't want to ally with you.
I don't like this guy.
There's no Muslim in this part that likes me. No
I
Muslim.
don't like this guy.
No Muslim in
On
this
this,
part
I
wants
have
to ally
with
with
him.
me. You're making him do painful things. He's suffering right now. Stop. This is not very good humanist behaviour, causing him to suffer.
No.
He's free to leave. He's free to have a conversation.
All
That's the
jokes
benefit.
aside. But this is why I would say, on what basis do you derive your moral grounds from? You're saying morally, where is it from? As in, you just make your own subjective moral?
That's exactly what he's doing.
Personally, I think it's about upbringing. I think it's intuition. I think it's
There's
emotion. I think it's
influences.
lots of things.
You acknowledge this.
But I also think I'm not.
On what basis can you say?
I'm not 100%
Wait,
certain.
wait 1 second. On what basis can you say love is love, homosexual sex is fine, but incestuous safe sex is bad?
Personally,
Yeah.
because I think the family unit is important. I think it degenerates the family.
Right. Well, wait. Well, what's a family unit?
The family you grew up.
Is it two men and their children?
It's the people you grow up with.
What about one man and four wives? What about
Some countries, yes.
what about? So my point is, because you're one second. Because your whole argument is based on the idea of social contractualism.
Yeah.
So if society agrees
Yeah.
that homosexual safe sex is fine, that's good. If society agrees that one man and four women is good, then that's good. So what happens if society agrees that safe sex between a brother and sister is good? Why is it that suddenly you are taking umbrage
Yeah.
at the fact of society coming to the social contract that incestuous sex is okay.
So I think you're conflating two things, and that's why I think this is a problem.
Go on, explain how.
I think there's what's right or wrong ethically. I do one that I think is relatively simple. I think gambling, doing it is bad for you. I think it's doing it's bad for others.
lying wrong.
Morally, it's wrong.
lying
is wrong. People shouldn't be in prison.
Exactly.
People shouldn't be put in prison if they've told a white lie. People shouldn't be put in prison for gambling. People shouldn't be put in prison necessarily for doing something ethically wrong. That's why I think the difference.
I agree.
Would you imprison people for being homosexual or committing
I
homosexual
need to
acts?
pray.
All right, we'll
I'll
what's
come
your name, bro?
round. Rayan.
Rayan. Let's talk
We'll
later.
talk later.
All right, no worries, Rayan. Right, so my point to you is, you haven't at no point in this conversation do I feel you've assailed any of my criticisms of liberal secular humanism. And at no point in this entire conversation do I feel that you have actually delivered any sort of criticism of the Christian worldview. Now, to be fair, I suspect that you never intended to, you never wanted to, and that's why you haven't, so that's fine. But the point is, in your defense of your ethical argument is based on social contractualism.
Political argument.
Right.
And I want to keep bringing this point back up again.
It's a political argument, but the point is, if society agrees that incestuous sex is okay, I mean, remember, society once believed it was okay to have apartheids. Society once believed that it was okay to enslave people. Society still tragically believes that it's okay to abort your children. Society, German society believed that we needed to wipe out all the Jews. Like, societies come up with different rules all the time. If your argument is purely, well, it's just what society agrees amongst itself, then it is quite possible in a hypothetical world that society could come to the conclusion, well, if two free individuals practicing safe sex who are brother and sister decide to have sex, then, well, it's their own business. Love is love. It's what they're doing in their own home. It doesn't impact anyone.
Yeah.
But in the Christian faith, I have a reason to say that that's wrong. In the Christian faith, it's spoken against.
But, so this is my point when you say things like that as well.
Yeah.
You say in the Christian faith.
Yes.
Many slavers thought the same things 500 years ago.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, go for it.
So do you know what a slaver's Bible is?
Not off the top of my head now.
Right. So this shows you just how anti-slavery the Bible is. When the American slave owners gave Bibles, because they felt this compulsion to convert the slaves.
Yeah.
But when they gave them a Bible, they actually edited out entire sections of the Bible because they feared if they gave them an unrevised, unedited Bible, that it would inspire the slaves to seek their own freedom. So if you read the book of Exodus, it's one of the greatest anti-slavery tracts ever.
When Hernan Cortez went to Mexico,
Yeah.
he didn't go there going, I'm going to mislead people on the Christian faith. He said, I am going to raise these people up or kill them by their droves because if they are not Christian, they are not human.
Yes, and
As is Ayatollah Khomeini.
okay, great.
Iran
Now
at the
do this.
moment
Now
says,
do this.
if you are
Now
not
do this.
Muslim,
Now do this. Show me in the Bible where his actions are justified in the new covenant.
Hernan Cortez very much believed it was.
No, that's not the question. Sorry, that's not the question. Sorry, that's not the question. Sorry, that's not the question. The question is, show me in the Bible where Hernan Cortez would go to justify the mass extermination of the Latin American
the New
people.
Testament says no.
Just ignoring him, bro. Answer the question.
Personally,
You don't know, do you?
I'm not a religious.
Right.
I would assume.
Can I tell you?
would look at the
Can I tell you? Can I tell you? Can I tell you? There is no justification for that. The problem, the difference between liberal secular humanism and Christianity is, I have an authoritative text and an authoritative interpretation of that text. You don't have anything, so you have nothing by which you can pin the idea that incest is wrong.
in the authoritative text
Of what, liberal secular humanism? There is no authoritative text
of the Bible.
Yeah, we're talking about. I'm pointing out
not
to you.
thinking there is. I mean, there is. I think you'd agree. In the Old Testament, there is stories of genocide of the
Right.
Canaanites. There's
So,
stories
yes.
of slavery.
So,
now,
yes,
sorry, let me
go on.
finish.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
go on.
Now, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong because I'm not a theologian. I'm not as well studied as you are on that subject. Because I'm thinking about things in terms of politics. I'm thinking about how we run a society, not how I believe individually. I think if an individual can come to that conclusion, we have to work out a society where we can live together
But that's the,
doesn't base itself on a book that some people interpret it to justify genocide,
Yeah,
justify
yeah,
slavery.
yeah,
We should
yeah.
find a way that we can live together,
Yeah.
which is based on living together,
yeah.
not based on something else.
Right. So, and I would say Christianity is still the better way to do that. Because if we were going to create a world, I think we would want to create a world that is built on love and good faith and hope and justice and prudence and chastity. Yes.
I'm most of the way with you, Ben.
Well, you just said chastity is about controlling one's sexual urges so that you're not controlled by your sexual urges.
Stoicism.
Yeah,
Still.
it's not stoicism, it's chastity. Stoicism is the belief. Stoicism is the ethical practice of upholding the virtues. So it's a virtue ethic system, and I've just
I don't want
described to you.
I can go on a bit of a rant myself.
Yeah, I've just described to you a virtue ethic system. So what I'm saying is, if we look at how do we create the best society, the one that a rational person and instinctively is drawn to is one that is tutored by apostolic and prophetic teaching.
Just talk about virtues, Ben. Would you believe a society that believes in self-righteousness? Not
Self-righteousness,
or righteousness, righteous indignation,
righteousness,
not timidity,
these are terms.
not over bravery, to use what Aristotle would call, but righteous indignation. When you see wrong, you challenge and change it.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that some people's understanding of what's right and wrong would differ to yours?
Yes.
If we created society based on that as a key pillar,
Yes.
that virtue, we'd run into trouble. Right?
But that's the
Very
point.
quickly.
But that's the problem with.
We would.
But that's the problem with liberalism. Is that liberalism is just virtues gone mad.
Well, here's the problem.
It's liberal.
But
No,
the
the
church
problem
is
with
distinct,
liberalism.
has-
The problem with
is
liberalism. The problem with liberalism is that it's virtues gone mad. Virtues aren't in a vacuum in the Christian worldview. They are pegged in by certain beliefs and certain values. So because of those certain beliefs and certain values, virtues can only express themselves. That certain avenues of how you could express virtue are shut down. They're shut down.
But you can't identify.
So for instance, self-righteousness,
Yeah.
which could easily actually be covered by the term of righteous indignation, is actually something that's spoken against by Christianity. Being ethical is about practicing and repracticing and learning how to do it better. That's how you become ethical. That's according to the Christian system.
But I think this is the important point. Politically, when we live with others, you can't base it based on values independent. You live your
I'm
values.
sorry, I can't hear you over this guy.
Right.
Go on, say
But
again.
you live your values.
Start again, because I didn't hear you.
You live your values.
Could you start again? Start again. What did you say?
We live politically. We live around and with other people.
Yeah, that's one way we
live your
express
values,
our
right?
ontology, yes.
So if we're living to live with other people, we have to accept that other people have different values to us, and we have to create a society which isn't based on our own individual values. That's my point.
But the point
we have
is
to
not-
find a way to live
Not
together
all values.
that's not based
Not all
on
values.
independent
Not all values
views.
are equally valid.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
And individualism is not as valid a value as the value of the church.
Well, the church isn't a value, though.
Yes, it is.
The church is a
No, a value. No, what is a value?
Well, let's leave the examples we gave. We talked about chastity. We might say prudence. We might say courage.
No,
we
those
might
are
say-
virtues. They're not
what do you mean by
values.
values, then? Sorry.
Exactly. So a value is the worth that we ascribe to something. If we ascribe worth to anything, it has a value. Your sunglasses cost something.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So it has a value. Right? It's how much do we value it? Your life has a value.
Yeah.
Yeah? I would say that the value of the church is more important than the value of the individual. Why? Because human beings were never meant to live as individuals. It's natural to us to live in community. And so, because it's natural for us to live in community, we should organise social units that are village-sized, and the church can embody that. The idea of creating village-sized communities in which people are born, in which people are raised, in which people die, in which they can know one another and know other people and be socialized in those units. The problem with individualism, the problem with individualism is that it destroys the village element of human nature. And so we're not living according to our human nature, and this creates lots of psychological problems. One of the reasons why there's an increase in depression, an increase in the sense of, let's just call it generally being lost in the world, is because individuals are growing up and living in isolation, and that isolation is being doubled down on, as it were, by the liberals' obsession with the novel, the new, as expressed in terms of technology, because technology is increasingly isolating us from one another. It's increasingly separating us from real relationships. If you've got 1,000 Twitter friends but no real friends you meet up with week to week, you haven't got real friends.
Shall I tell you why? My belief how that's a problem is you'll find your own community online, your own niche values of a dozen people out of a million who will agree with you on every single point.
Human beings need physical.
Well, 20 years ago,
human beings need real interaction.
And then that's people who are different, who disagree, who create a novel world.
So that's not community then?
Well, it is a community.
No.
Community is living with other people. It's not living with multiple.
That's not a community. That's individualism. That's not community. That's not community.
Other people.
That is not community. That is a society based on individualism, and you're conflating community with a society based on individualism. A community is a group of people that are brought together and are united by common beliefs, common values, common practices, common customs. That's a community.
That has to be the lowest part, and this is where I think
it's not the lowest.
This
it's
is
the highest.
It's the highest. Lowest part that should be set as low as possible.
No, that's the optimum.
But to make government work, you need it to be as unless we start going back into a village of 50 people. And if I live with you and you live with me,
and you need a higher authority than us to make those rules.
Amen.
And laws.
Who knows what that higher authority says?
The church.
The church. Who's the church?
The church is the people of God.
So not me.
Yes, that's correct.
No, that's
correct.
Exactly.
That's monarchical dictatorship at this point.
No.
That's why I'm so against it. It should be together, coming together.
Without using the word church?
No, there can definitely be communities outside of the church. There can be other forms of community. Yes, absolutely. So, for example, like Jewish kibbutz, that would be an example of community.
Without any religion involved, just community versus individual.
Well, that's the problem.
And have community without any other power.
No, because it doesn't work.
Is my neighbourhood watch a community?
Because then
Tell us why.
It's an association.
Because everyone's rules are then subjective.
I think you're getting so pedantic.
No, I'm really not. An association is a group of people that unite over a common cause. A community is something that are united in a common cause, but they share values, beliefs, customs and traditions and a history. An association can exist inside of a community, or it can exist independent of community, and a neighbourhood watch is an example of an association independent, possibly independent, of a community. But you could also have a neighbourhood watch from within a community as well.
Okay, so
I want to start wrapping this up. So
that's fair enough. That was good to talk to Bob, isn't it?
Yeah.
Steve, nice to meet you, Bob.
Nice to meet you, Steve. Have you got a Bible, Steve?
I do not.
I'd like to give you a gift.
I feel like you've had enough no's today.
So, here's my gift to you. I pray that you read it, and I pray that you consider our conversation as you read it, because this built a successful civilization. It was inspirational to a successful civilization, and the further we've moved away from its teachings, the worse things have gotten in Western civilization.